grown in the soil and it's dug up in the wintertime and the soil shaken off of it, it's graded, it's processed, put variety, stored in a cooler, and then sold to you in the spring. These trees can either be grown in the soil and then moved to a container, or they can actually be started in a container and grown from there. One is called container grown, the other is containerized. Containerized is not as good as container grown because all the roots are in a container grown tree. A containerized tree is not a whole lot different than a bare root because when you dig them, you remove some of the root systems. So you get kind of what you pay for. But that being said, these can be planted most any time of the year. You wouldn't want to plant these in the summertime. It's just too much stress on any plant, even though theoretically, if they're container grown, all the roots are there. It's just tough when you move something out of its one environment to another, especially soil. So these are typically planted this time of year, a little earlier. You know, we'd like to have them in the ground before they start flowering and budding out, but we can do it. So February is a good time. March, April, May is, you still can do it, but they're all leafed out, like I said. But container grown trees, they're available at the nursery. You can plant them in the fall. Again, any kind of fruit tree that's bare roots, not going to be available till the spring because they're dug in the winter. We're going to remove this from the container. All right. You don't see any huge, great big old finger-sized roots. That would tell me that it's been in there a year or so more than it needs to be. These look pretty healthy. Most of them are white. There's a few that are brown here, but I see a lot of white roots. There's two schools of thoughts on planting these. One is that you plant it like it is. The other is you take all the soil off. Well, I typically kind of go in between the two. I typically will rough up the soil. If I see any roots that are broken, I prune them off, but I don't like to stick them in there just like that. I like to prune some of them off because when I do that, when I break some of these roots, I'm encouraging them to grow back. It's like a top of a tree. When you cut the top out, what happens? You initiate a lot of new growth. You reduce the apical dominance and you get all these side shoots. Same with the root system. You prune these roots and you get more rooting. It's actually healthier for the tree, and you're going to see that as we go along, especially with that bare root tree over there. So, boy, this baby is packed. You can get kind of rough with it. It's all right. Well, yeah, it's okay. It's not going to hurt it. Okay. So I'm taking some of this off, like I said I was. All right. Boy, there's a lot of roots here, guys. It looks healthy. Some of these big roots, see, I'll just rip out. Okay, I got a big root that was starting to grow inward. I got it out. Okay. Now, see? All right, now, as far as the height, size of the hole, it doesn't need to be huge. I'm not so concerned about the width as I am the depth. I can dig these a little wider if I need to. And by the way, we'll pull these up a little later on. We're not going to leave them here, but just for demo. I like to get it wide enough where I can work soil around it, right? Now, you always want to try it. That's a little bit shallow. Well, shallow. Hang on. It's better off to be above ground a little bit more than it is too low. You never want to get them too low because the roots aren't going to form right. There's a fine balance between the oxygen and roots and the soil. Okay, so just remember that. Now, Okay, that's pretty good. Some people will use an auger, and they'll dig that hole out 2 feet deep for a tree like this. And they put it in there, and it comes up to here, and well, they know that's too deep. Okay, so they fill it in, but they forget to pack the bottom, and over time it sinks. That's not a good thing, especially with pecans. The trees get so big that in orchards where that's done, the trees will actually blow over because they can't root properly. I'm just saying that's very critical. All right, so that's about right. I might throw just a little bit of soil in the bottom. Just try it. All right, then backfill it with the soil that came out of the hole. There's no need to put a lot of organic matter or anything like that, unless it's just adobe clay, and then you got to think, wow, maybe I should be putting that in a bed or something. It's just not going to drain well. All right. And I like the loose dirt, obviously. I don't like clods. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and water it real good before you finish putting all the soil on. So we could water that. Trees are a little different than vegetables. There's a lot of stored nutrient in the stem and the roots. It's a lot bigger plant. So what I'm trying to say is water and weed control is much more important the first year on these trees than fertilizer. Matter of fact, we're not even going to put nitrogen on this. We'd prefer not to, as a rule, granular until it starts growing. The phosphorus, potassium's fine. We'll do soil tests before that. All right, then we're going to fill it up the rest of the way. And then we might even put I like them up a little bit. I don't mind being up than buried in the ground real deep. I can mound up next to it. And then what I can do, I'll water that in. And matter of fact, I'll go around and water it, around it. And then if you want to, you go ahead and you can make your little moat around it if you can, if you have the opportunity to do that, so it'll hold water. Another option would be to we do this with pecans a lot. We'll put a barrel, or not a barrel, a bucket. We'll drill a hole in the bucket, set it next to it, and that's our drip system. Just a very small hole in the bottom, or right at the bottom, very small, 1/8 inch or less. And it just needs to weep. It does not need to flow. And just let it sit there right next to the tree once a week, depending on the time of year. Fill it up. It just oozes out. And then come back, maybe, depending on the weather. You might have to do that twice a week. You can mulch that. I didn't make much of a moat, did I? So, but you get the idea. Oh, soil is pretty crappy. Okay. Put your mulch in there in the middle, right?
So you'd stick your bucket right inside your moat?
Yeah. Matter of fact.
And that'd be the size of your bucket?
Yeah, you can use this. Put it right here. And just put won't hurt a thing. And that'll keep that tree going without a drip system. What form do we want for a peach tree? We want an open center, right? It's called a vase. And research has shown they do better. The fruit needs sunlight in the middle of the tree so they color up right. They get a nice pink, that rose color, So now I see one branch right now that's got a wounded arm, right? A wing. So we're going to cut that one off. To the trunk? Yeah. Don't leave stubs. It's cool, man. Cut it back to the trunk. All right. We need 3 or 4 scaffold branches. And at the early, that's why I like these young trees. I can pick out my scaffolds. You see a lot of trees in the nursery that are this high, and the first branch is right here. You can't grow a peach that way. You'll be on a ladder. You want your branches down here. That's why I like that tree. All right. So we need, I'll tell you what I see four branches right now that are perfectly spaced. I'm going to cut that one off. Okay. That is it. That will make a beautiful peach tree right there. All right. So you want that. I said open center. That's what I meant. Open center. Okay. That is.
You want to let it grow up to have 2 or 3 layers.
Well, you could. I mean, I could have. You want all of your branches to come off about from like 16 inches up to maybe 30 inches or so. I could have left one of them, but I like those because they were evenly distributed. All four parts, see? I think that'll make a nice tree. Okay, so that's how you train that tree, okay? You can use 3 or 4. I just did 4 because they're evenly spaced. I thought that'd be kind of cool. But I love the reaction. Ah! Yeah. I've had that happen so many times. That's okay. A modified central leader means that up as high as we can prune, we're going to try to have one major central leader, and then once it gets up to, where it's above our ladder height or above our foot height, we just kind of let it go, and we try to have one leader that's higher than everything else, so the tree will continue to try to grow straight up, unlike this. So, by the way, if your tree comes with one of these, you should never need this after you prune it properly. No, I kind of gave it away what I'm going to do to it, but. All right, I love this tree because these angles, see how they're 90 degree? That's a good structure for a tree. If everything's upright, then you're going to get some occluded bark down the road. If they're occluded bark means it's pinched bark, it doesn't have any strength to it, and they're real susceptible to splitting out in a storm, ice storm, windstorm, whatever. So we've got several things we can choose here. The neat thing about this is these branches here, I'm going to leave them, but I don't have to leave them forever. I can take them off, they're small enough. But all I want to do is just make sure I have a few good, evenly spaced, proportionally directed scaffold branches. That's what these are. That's what these will become. And then I want to make sure I have one central leader. And boy, that one already has it. I kind of picked a simple one to demonstrate on. Most of the time they're not this easy, but it's just for the effect. So what I'm going to do, I don't need all of these.
What's the right number?
Again, early on, we can leave some of those. Actually, we want probably 8 to 12 inches between scaffolds as we go up on the mature tree. But as young as this is, I think what we need to do is concentrate more on getting rid of the really bad ones, or bad shaped ones, or misdirectional ones, and then tip all of them so that they'll thicken up. The reason we tip these is so that we can get these branches to, it invigorates them, but also makes them a little thicker. It just does. I mean, that's in girth, especially the trunk. So I just like to do that. It just gives me something to do, actually. That's not why you do it. Let's see. We've got a lot of them over here on this side. Boy, I sure like that thing. That's a stout branch. I like this one. You know what? This one's kind of out of place. I'm going to take that one off. Rely on that one. Let's see. I might take that one off. Okay. I've taken all I want off right now. Kind of spaced them out a little bit. And then I'm going to cut this way back. Way back. Let's say back to here. Okay? Matter of fact, a little bit more. Thank you. All right. So, see, that's okay. Now, this one bud here on the very tip, that will be the dominant bud. That'll break, and that thing will just grow like crazy. And the rest of these will grow, and they'll get thicker. And so that's how we prune that. Okay. Now, let's move on. Any questions about that? Modified central leader, you want those branches to go up kind of evenly spaced around the tree, space them as they go up. We can take some more out as the tree gets older. These are actually maybe a little too close, these two right here. But they're still small enough we can take them off next year. Cut them back to get the girth. Those, there's no central leader to that. All of them are going to grow the same, their own direction, and we'll train them all. These apples, they kind of produce on spurs, the fruit do, and those spurs are just little, well, they're spurs of growth, plant tissue that produce new growth every year, and they produce buds. On the peach tree, the flower buds are produced on 1-year-old wood, and that's it. Well, after that, you prune it out. It only produces on wood that is 1 year old, all right? And on these, again, the spurs will be here, and they'll just get a little larger. So you prune a peach tree a lot more severe than you do an apple tree. Okay, that's because that's the nature of how they grow and how they fruit. All right, pecan tree. Now, this is the bare root tree. Look at that.
How many years is that?
This thing is probably only a couple years old. It's a smaller tree. You can buy these things this size, smaller than this, up to 8 foot. This is a good size. It's cheaper. And pecan trees now are going to run anywhere from $20 to $40 a piece, grafted. And that grafted, right? All these trees are grafted. They're not grown from seed because we don't know what they are then. You have to graft to maintain the identity of the variety, because they're cross-pollinated. Pecans are cross-pollinated. You don't know what you got if you keep the seed, okay? So now you can grow from seed and then graft onto that with a known variety. Like someone said, can we keep some of that wood? And yeah, you could actually graft that wood onto a seedling peach if you wanted to, certain times of year, depending on the kind of graft you use. So on this thing, look at this. And the reason we soak it is we want to try to hydrate this before we plant it. And then we want to prune this back to where it fits in the hole. Now, I'll be honest with you, with these pecan trees, they're in commercial production, they don't spend a lot of time. They're planting hundreds of these, if not thousands, right? So they go down the row and they use an auger, and they auger out a hole, and that hole could be anywhere from 8 inches to maybe 12 at the most. I mean, that's being real generous. So you've got to prune these things back so they fit in the hole. You do not want these roots to curve around the inside of the hole, because they could get root bound and choke the tree, so to speak. All right, so we're going to cut some of these off so they'll fit the hole. And I haven't done the really bad stuff yet. All right. And then here's the root level. Here's the soil level right here. That's a root. So here's the soil level where my fingers are. We're going to cut some of that root system off. We're going to cut it back. On larger trees, I've seen these things 3 foot long, these great big 8 foot trees, and we will never leave them 3 foot, because that means you have to dig your hole 3 foot. That's silly. That's a lot of time, and in the same reason we cut the roots back, that's why we did the top, to generate new root growth. The longest we ever want a pecan root is 18 inches. This is a smaller tree, we can even cut it back further. So I'm going to cut it back to about 12 inches. So if you'll just hold that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right, let me see, right here. Yeah, okay. There's not a whole lot left, is there? But that thing will grow like crazy. We'll stick it in the hole. We plant them kind of like that, right? We just work the soil around them, water it, and we're half filled up. We put the rest of the soil in, water it really good. And then once we get it planted, we're going to have to pull this up. That's why I'm not going to plant it. Actually, I'm just lazy. I don't want to dig a hole. But once it's in the ground, then we're going to come back. Come here, young lady. Thank you. Just hold it right there. Actually, move your hand down there. All right, so where's root level? Where's the ground level? Yep. Thank you. Right when that bark changes color. Then we're going to take the top. Where was it again? Right where your fingers are? Oh, right down there. Put your fingers right where it is. Okay? come back a third to a half, cut the top out. All right, and we'll usually try to cut back to a bud. There's one right there, so I'd be a little bit better if I cut right there. At a slant, that tree's ready to go, except it's not in the ground, right? There you go.
So does it go in the ground here or does it go in the ground?
No, it goes here. You put it back in the same depth that came out of the nursery. And for heaven's sakes, don't plant it too deep, right? If you take home anything, don't plant it too deep. And don't be afraid to cut on it.
So the hairs are okay to leave on?
Yeah, you can cut some of those back if you want to.
Tell us which ones you cut back.
Well, I mean, you can't spend a lot of time. You can cut some of these off or just cut them back. Don't get crazy with it. You'll never get anything done. The main thing is I've got them back to where I can get them in the hole and they're not bound up in that hole, okay? All right, that's all there is to that. And then now you could put some trunk guard around them. You want to do that on any of these trees, it's okay. Thank you. Huh? Right here. This keeps the sun off the trunk, keeps that young tissue from sun scalding in the summer, actually in the winter, and then it will bake in the summer. It's just really good. It also keeps some off spray. If you're treating around it with some herbicide, keep the weeds out around it, it keeps it off of the trunk. This is a good investment. It's got holes in it to let the air out so it doesn't, the humidity out so it doesn't get too moist in there where fungus can grow. Plus it's white, it reflects the sun. Good stuff. And this is just stuff that you can buy commercially. It just winds up on itself. Or you can buy other types of trunk guards. For a homeowner, this is all you need. Commercially, if you're planting thousands of trees, they make stuff just in volume that you can buy.